Thank you for coming. We are pleased to have Kurt Arrigo with us tonight. I think he deserves no introduction, but I'm going to do one anyway. So, having known Kurt for quite a while and actually knowing his brother, God bless his soul, and your dad, it's no surprise that Kurt has this affinity for water and underwater material. And I think you were born into it and it will stay with you. But I think you still need something extra to go beyond that. And I think it takes skill, perseverance, and actually putting your mind to it and actually being quite creative and inventive with what you do. And I think Kurt has managed to achieve quite a lot in his now almost 4 decades.
Almost, yeah, thereabout. So, I'm not counting, but...
I think I will let the material speak for itself. So without further ado, Kurt Arrigo.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me. Real pleasure and honor to be here. To be honest, I'm not that familiar and frequent with giving talks, so I'll give it my best shot, and we'll see how it goes. So, in a nutshell, well, I'm born in here in Malta. Lived all my life in Malta. It's been my base, and pretty much I've often asked, sort of, why do we do what we do? And it's often been the case where I kind of revisit and wonder why we do things that we maybe connect with more than what other people do. For me, it was quite clear, and I was lucky that I found sort of my connection and purpose mainly with the sea. The sea has been, sort of the strong magnetic pull that I've had growing up. I pretty much grew up on the water's edge as a young kid. And at an early stage, the big blue was my lure. I pretty much, lived in it as a young child. And I was drawn to the outdoors, the space, the energy it gave, the feeling it basically had towards, I would say, not my photography, because my photography came second, I would say, and generally I started off, sort of like with diving and activity, and then at a later stage I picked up a camera, and the camera started, following me around. But it was the commitment and being part of the ocean and the sea. And the sea, as we know, is Mother Nature, which one has to really respect and not take for granted. So I felt quite committed, and without sort of giving it much thought, I felt that I really wanted to explore this avenue and see how I could connect with it. And that's when I started wanting to capture moments. And that's what I felt was most important at the time. So without sort of like hesitating, I really, went straight into it. I committed myself into basically understanding the field of photography, and without hesitation, I made things happen. I created my assignments, I created my purpose, I created what I love to do, and it paved the way slowly. And in a funny way, I started to make things happen. So much so that only a few years ago, I wanted to explore, the Arctic Circle. I had never been there, and I wanted to connect with it. So I was quite familiar with sailing and that area of expertise. So I connected with a young explorer who had a small sailing boat, and I thought, look, hey, what if I had to join you on one of your expeditions, and all I can offer is help sail your boat and come and take pictures. So off I went, and this was only a few years ago that I was on this boat and exploring the Arctic Circle. So my point was that I was so committed to, and this was pretty much throughout the journey of my life, where Whatever I did it with full passion. Now, I'll talk a little bit about these pictures as we go along, because it might be easier for me to relate to and explain what's going on and what's happening. So here I am in the Arctic Circle, very north of Norway, and this Norwegian explorer was pretty much documenting orcas. And I was fascinated with whales, as I have been all my life with whales. And I thought this would be, you know, one hell of an opportunity for me to get on board. And the challenge about being in the Arctic Circle at this time of the year, which is in Norway, is that you're only given pretty much 1 hour of daylight in the day. So you're very restricted in terms of what you can do within that hour. The elements are, I would say, quite brutal. It ranged from 0 to -20 to snowstorms coming down horizontal, but this is what lured me in, and this is what really captivated me. And more important, what I felt was this was my happy place. This is where I really thrived, and this is where I really enjoyed being. So here I am on board this little 38-foot sailing boat, which is relatively small when you've got, you know, surrounded by the fjords and ice. And having said that, this boat has now traveled to Iceland and further up north, Svalbard, and he's quite an explorer. But for me, it was capturing moments that would enthrall my life and to help, you know, capture what this explorer was doing. So here I got into the water as well, in 3 degrees of water, which was pretty breathtaking, to say the least. It was one hell of an experience. So I was in a wetsuit which was made to measure and designed specifically for me. But more important, you know, what makes these assignments possible are the preparation that goes into, you know, going for these assignments. You don't really just turn up and expect to, you know, to go smoothly. You've got to think about all the equipment. You've got to think about the food you're going to take with you, the duration of time you're going to be out at sea, the planning, your camera gear. You've got when you're getting out of the cold water, what you're doing, where you're going. But it's so exhilarating that it's rewarding on so many levels that, to be honest, for me, I couldn't be more happier being in such an environment. Here was an experience where one day it was literally snowing horizontal, and you can see Andreas, who's at the helm, and the snow is literally coming down. To, you know, the following 1 hour of daylight where you've got a beautiful sunset in the fjords and the sailboat is there. And for that shot, I actually used a drone, which gave me all the bells and whistles and don't fly and everything, because it was, you know, the temperatures and all the errors it was saying, but still, you've got to risk it every now and then to try and get the shot. And then another shot is, you know, next to a male, I would say 18 or 20-foot orca swimming by, which was, to say the least, exhilarating in itself. Capturing these type of shots are quite unique and quite rare. Obviously, we do see them now where people are very much committed into just shooting these things, these sort of mammals in this environment. But there's so much element of unexpected, where you're not sure what you're going to get, how you're going to get it, how you're going to capture it. So the best thing you can do is be prepared for these environments and be prepared for whatever possibly might come across your lens. This was one little moment where we were actually just leaving a harbor, and I was out on deck, and we suddenly noticed that, you know, some orcas were following this fishing boat, claiming its fish back, which was quite a unique thing, because you've got an orca there swimming behind a fishing boat, you know, hoping to get the bits and pieces of the orca, and claiming any sort of fish that might fall off. But you never know when these things are going to happen. You never know when an event might occur. So you just have to be ready, you have to be prepared, your camera, and it's also not just about taking a picture for me. It's a picture that I would like, you know, to say 1,000 words, but, you know, it's more important to resonate and connect and show what you're feeling, and express what the moment might reveal. So this was quite, you know, sort of a unique moment and a fulfilling little expedition that I had gone not so long ago. But more important, you know, where did I start? My roots.
How long did you stay on that adventure?
So I was on the boat for about 10 days.
About 10 days. You were just two?
So we were 2 or 3 people, but we alternated a few people on the boat. But the logistics are quite of a hassle to shift crew around. But there was a port. In fact, a guy that did come on the boat came on a ferry, and then he couldn't get off the ferry because of bad weather. The boat ended up going all the way to Russia and coming back, and eventually made it on the little sailboat. But going back to, you know, where I started, Malta is pretty much where my roots are, and this is where I started my career in photography, and this is where I started the passion. I pretty much started shooting, like Charles mentioned, almost 20, 30, 40 years ago maybe. I've stopped counting, but I was pretty much shooting, you know, the most iconic places that we have in Malta, which we know all very well. This particular picture was shot literally on, you know, a transparency film, and what you're seeing is what I shot. No cranes, no uninterfered sort of obstacles in there, but this is where, you know, I really connected with the camera and the elements. This is where I learned how to, you know, sort of balance the two, and this is where Malta taught me, you know, sort of the beauty of photography, light, and merging the two together, merging the commitment of taking pictures, waiting for the right light. As you can see, maybe on the left side of the picture, Teeny Point hadn't even probably put their permits out for a massive building, but that was my early days, and I was shooting film, and that's where I learned so much about photography, and I learned a lot about myself, and I learned a lot about, you know, going out there, and I kind of made a bit of a commitment about, you know, almost taking a picture every day for, I think it was about 1.5 years, where I would go out, take pictures, and whether it was the coastline or, more important, things that I would connect with myself. I did a lot of open water swimming, and I did swimming as well. So I thought it was quite a natural thing to do, where I would commit myself to taking pictures that I would know the sport, and I would be able to anticipate what was going on. So these were different perspectives, you know, group of swimmers, one individual swimmer. The one on the left is Gail Rizzo, who at the time was sort of Malta's elite swimmer, and it was the national pool, still tiled at the time. But it was a great learning curve, and it was a project that I was shooting athletes and merging the sport with what I love to shoot and how I felt would be different in a way. I would obviously shoot other locations in Malta, get my cameras wet, get my feet wet as well, and try to capture as much as I could, merging the elements together. So this was a really important, vital part of my career, where I felt it was pretty much the foundations of what I was doing and how I did it, which eventually led me into, other projects, and it was my portfolio that I was building up throughout my early days. This was a photo of Kurt Dowling at the time, which I was fortunate enough to win quite a prestigious international award with this picture as well. I think one of the few times I actually entered awards, because I never really was one that really kind of participated. But again, it was merging, the sports and the photography and capturing moments, which was, in a nutshell, helping me pave the way for years to come. And till today, I still find myself revisiting places that I did 20, 30 years ago. A part of my life and my photography has, very much part of it has been sailing. I started sailing at a young age, and in fact, to be honest, I'm really proud to, and see I started sailing with Ray, who was very instrumental into helping me and teaching me. Yeah, and so it was really nice to see you here, Ray. Because Ray taught me a lot when I started on big boats, and we used to go racing together. So it was, and I think probably you might remember me, taking pictures, we took pictures together, windsurfing. So it's been a big part of my life. And it sort of slowly started to pave the way into being more committed into a subject that I was very close to and very committed to, and move away from maybe the commercial jobs that I was getting and doing, and try to make more of a career of shooting something that I was even more committed to. Over the years, it became my comfort zone, and it became a place where I felt extremely comfortable. And even internationally, there were very few people that did this sort of thing, between shoots on board, underwater, and from other vantage points, such as, a chase boat or helicopter and that sort of thing. So it's pretty much, paved the way, being in Malta and sailing in Malta and merging my past of my photography that I was doing. And then I was fortunate enough that the Rolex Middle Sea Race was actually taking part in Malta. So I started shooting that, and that went further afield, where I was fortunate enough to get assignments, sort of far afield from, sort of shooting the other international events. And here, with these pictures, talking a little bit about the pictures, I tend to try and capture something a little bit that is not the mainstream. So whether it's the architecture with boats, or the reflections, or the shadows, or something that's going to maybe say something a little bit different, that depicts a moment, that depicts something that emotionally does something to you. And I've very been, sort of driven by that aspect, that an image needs to say something a little bit more than just a photo. This is on board a home hand-built boat, which is built by the Rapaz, which is Barney. And this is, once again, trying to put the elements together, whether it's sea spray, the boat, the movement of the boat, the energy, the motion of what's going on. So it's pretty much what I felt extremely comfortable and happy to be doing, which was only too good to be true, to be honest, which eventually helped me, get to capture phenomenal yacht races, such as the Sydney to Hobart, the Rolex Fastnet race, the Middle Sea race. I've been doing it for a number of years. But what's more important is that how you try to align all the variables together. And by that, what I mean is, the yachting industry, or I would say more than the industry, capturing photography requires so many different variables. It's a challenge of getting your place, getting yourself into location, getting yourself there on a boat, getting the boat driver to understand what you're doing, what you'd like to capture, and to put yourself in the right place at the right time, if you're lucky. So there's a lot of challenges that one faces, and you, over time, it only comes with a certain amount of experience that you're able to, I would say, communicate this message and build a team that you're comfortable with, that you feel strong in terms of, and safety-wise, and committed more than that. So it's easy to see a picture and just look at it, but what I used to do, especially when I was, my days of trying to learn photography, I would try to break down images of how people got to where they got to with an image. And I was dealing with a lot of the elements in life. So I would deal with, the natural elements. So it would be water and sea conditions, and wind and light and thunderstorms, or whatever it is. So I would try to break down and see what people were doing, and then I would see how I would mix it up and bring whatever I could bring to the table. And I would also obviously try to create an artistic approach to it. So it wasn't just a case of taking a picture and it's a picture, but I wanted to try to convey something a little bit more in my photography, where, I mean, in here you've got a big sail, a spinnaker coming down, and a couple of sailors bringing it down. But it was more the movement and more the light hitting the sails and trying to put yourself in a position and anticipating. I think one can only do certain shots. You're either lucky or you have a certain amount of experience in your field of choice. So knowing what to anticipate certainly helps with your subjects and how you put yourself in those positions. This was quite an event when shooting a few years back. I think this was 2009 in the Middle Sea race, where it was, I think, a very strong northwesterly, something like 30, 40 knots of wind. And we would have to get the helicopter from Messina, which was where the helicopter was based. But the pilot, all too well knew that the conditions were not very flyable, because you have to have visual and you have to have good visibility to be able to fly the helicopter. But we would see a bit of break in the clouds, and we knew that the boats had already passed by the iconic part of Stromboli, and we knew that we would miss them. But so it was a big call to decide whether we were going to try and risk it, or try to try and take off, and if anything, we'll go back and land. It was raining, it was thunderstorms all over, and you really don't want to be in a helicopter when those things are happening, because you're bouncing all over the place. You're not exactly feeling very comfortable, and your safety is obviously is number one priority. And then you say, what the hell am I doing? Do I really need to be here? But sometimes it takes that extra push, to go out there and to take the shot, and to put yourself in a position that that is going to be a little bit different. And sure enough, we were lucky, because when we got to Stromboli, the boats had already gone down. We flew another 20 miles, I think, and we got the boats. And at that moment, the sun came out, and this was one of the shots that we managed to capture both on video and film. There are various moments in my career and shooting yacht racing, and that I had moments similar to that. This was another moment where I was in Capri, and it had been shooting. It was a long offshore race, where boats are out at sea for 2 or 3 days. And we had been following them down all the way to the Aeolian Islands, and it was raining throughout the whole day. It was, so all we got was literally boats and rain and as dull as anything. And we had pretty much almost done our time, almost run out of fuel. And as we were coming into land at Capri, I noticed the sun came out, and I asked the pilot, listen, can we just go, one round and give it a shot? And sure enough, we were lucky enough that the sun was actually beaming onto the boat with the island reflecting on the hull of the boat. It was a great moment, obviously, where that sometimes pushing that extra and trying and being perseverance in what you do really goes a little bit further. It's rewarding when you do capture something that you think you might have missed out and not captured. So the hard work and I would say hard work. It's a collaboration really with working with people with all the. You want something?
Yes. In that instant where you don't have the luxury to turn around and see all the boats.
Yeah.
How would you have communicated with the pilot? Because obviously the angle, he had to come down.
Yeah.
Whatever to get the sun reflection. Is it you communicated by just the VHF?
Yeah. So communicating with the helicopter pilot, you have headphones and you have a mic. So you're basically communicating with the pilot. So with the video guy, he actually has a monitor. So the video, he's seeing the video, what he's seeing. But with photography, it's a bit different because he's not really seeing what I'm seeing. So I really need to give instructions and I really need to communicate what I want, especially the optics. Because sometimes you're shooting with a wide lens, sometimes you're shooting with a medium telephoto lens, and sometimes you're shooting with a big 400mm lens. So it is really instrumental how you communicate with whoever you're working with. And over the years, I found it, to be a real vital, important part in how you get on with the people you're working with. I remember, in my early days when I just shoot a lot of races all over really, especially in Sardinia, I'd get frustrated and not knowing, I'd rush up to try and chase boats or try and chase a subject and only to miss it and then to realize why did I miss it and then I had to take responsibility and figure out that look, if I'm going to do something, I need to communicate my message a lot better. It's the same like whether you're communicating with a model or whether you're communicating with a picture that you're getting. It's just that you're dealing with the elements, you're dealing with rough water, you're dealing with a boat, you're dealing with time. So there's a lot of these variables which you have to try to join the dots. It's been quite exhilarating for me because I've really tried to capture different moments and also what tends to happen is when you get onto a boat or a helicopter, people are asking you, the pilot, okay, what do you want? And to be honest, you never really know what you want. You might know what you want, but it's about going out and looking for a picture. It's about creating a picture. It's about putting yourself in a position that is going to help, whether you're going to create an artistic visual of it or just take a picture. And all these little dots need to be joined by you putting them together. So you've got to I felt, looking for the picture, seeing, analyzing, reading the type of maybe the boat or what's happening, what's interesting in it, and being ready, being prepared for what might literally, unfold in a split second right in front of you. And this is very much one of the cases, where sometimes there's not a lot of action happening out at sea, where boats are just drifting or sailing in not heavy conditions, and you want to convey what's going on, and you want to convey something that is happening, throughout the race. So I would say I really was accustomed to try to, and I still today try to put my soul into looking for a picture and looking to create something and looking into create something that has maybe a different message and in a way that is going to evoke again an emotion on something. So it's about pushing your boundaries, and I think it's taught me a lot, and it's been fun to do it, and that's what I think most important is why you do things. Being prepared for moments such as thunderstorms, weather conditions, anticipating light, anticipating what might happen. Of course, I'm showing you, shots that look good, but along the way there are a lot of shots that, didn't really materialize. So there are a lot of shots that I've spent hours out at sea, spent hours waiting. The motto is hurry up and wait, so you're traveling to one place to hope that something might happen. So I wouldn't say it's like wildlife photography, but it's got a lot of similarities, where luck and being prepared play a crucial role in the situation. And having the right tools, having the right boat, having the right boat driver, having the right food on board, because you need to have these things with you. This was a case of, an image can never be replicated in a way, and this is certainly one of them. And I mean this is an offshore race which happens, a yachting race which happens in England. It starts from England, sails all the way to the south of Ireland and back to England, although they changed the course slightly. So to cover this sort of race, I start in England, shoot the start, and then get onto a plane, and then travel all the way to Ireland, and then drive all the way down to the south of Ireland and get onto a boat and hope for the best and wait for boats rounding towards sunset or sunrise. And to capture this shot, I think I was up for straight 36 hours because I had spent all day shooting, traveled at night, woke up, went up in the morning, and then got these guys coming out at sunrise. And I say, sort of why this won't happen again, because sometimes the geography won't be the same. In fact, unfortunately, the lighthouse, they don't light it like that anymore. They use an LED, which is on the top of the light. It was a beautiful boat coming around at the right time, at the right moment, and it's about capturing that moment. And it's also, again, positioning yourself in the right position. You've got to really communicate with who is driving your boat and get them to understand what you want and try to get them to figure out how far you want to be, how close you want to be, and to be prepared. You're also dealing with I'm not sure if you can figure it out, but there's a big sea state over there. There's about 2-3 meters of swell, so it's a challenging situation. And sea spray and cameras don't really go that well, unfortunately. They tend to not like each other, so you've really got to look after your equipment. You've got to be prepared for that. You've got to have backups. You've got to hope for the best, really and truly, and pray that things don't go astray. This was another event where the conditions were pretty brutal, and I have to say that it was a case of, it was so bad that the boat driver didn't want to go out that day. It was extreme conditions because of it. It was in the Solent in the UK, where the tide and the waves were meeting, so the conditions were even harsher. But I managed to convince him, saying, okay, we'll only just hang around one area, and even I thought at the time I was a bit crazy convincing him, but we went out, we did it. Obviously my gear was, to say the least, drenched. But when you end up with at least a semi-decent picture, it's rewarding and it's fulfilling, but at the same time, it takes a lot of grit to try and merge all these elements together. And this was a classic little sort of event as well, which was at the Fastnet, where sometimes you're looking for pictures and you're not sure what you're going to get. And sometimes it's just like to step back and look at things from a different perspective. And, you know, and this was a case of, let's just go up in the sky and see what we see. Of course, one thing that I love to work with in my work is the use of light, as we all do, and especially photography, but I really, you know, find it very important, you know, when you've got shimmering light and shadows and depth, it just adds so much more to an image rather than it being flat. And for marine photography, you really need to I personally keep these in mind, and it's what I feel, you know, differentiates me from other marine photographers, where I really, you know, pay a lot of attention into where I'd like to be and how I'd like to position myself. And this was just another little storm brewing over a boat, which again, you know, the light and the colors, it just sort of blends quite nicely together. I was on a boat, shooting from a chase boat, chasing a boat and not knowing what was going to happen. And I think I was out at sea for about 2-3 hours and didn't have anything, but one shot literally appeared, and it sort of worked its magic. And more important, it's just, again, being ready and being patient and working with it. And this is what photography has really taught me in my career, you know, about being persistent, being patient, learning how to understand yourself, learning how to work with what you have, and how to go around things and how to see it from a different angle, maybe. And so it's a real university of life. Sense of humor. I've never really had an enormous sense of humor myself, but I remember in my early days of photography, I attempted to buy an underwater housing, and at the same time when I was actually doing a lot of yachting photography, and I thought I was into diving, I did a lot of diving, so I thought, you know, sure, why not, you know, also take up underwater photography. And ironically, one of the first articles I read was, if you don't have a good sense of humor, don't take up underwater photography. And this was a time when underwater housings were, you know, in their very much early days. There was, you know, no alarms, no pressure testing, there was nothing. So true to the article, the amount of cameras that flooded and frustration that led up to pictures like this was, I would say, a lot of swearing and a lot of frustration, and a lot of disheartening pictures which I thought I almost gave up on. But you just kind of find your way through, and you plow through, and you find a way to keep at it, and the fulfillment after capturing images underwater, when you know you have to deal with diving, camera gear, dive equipment, your safety, hopefully a buddy who's patient enough to hang around with you, and then shoot wildlife. So it's again, you know, a little bit of working at it and being persistent, and challenging yourself and living up to the challenge. This was a school of barracudas here, which I shot only last summer, which was a project for United Nations, FAO, which I collaborated with throughout last summer, where it was all about fish life. And we needed a school of fish for the project that they were trying to show. And I think I went to San Dimitri about 4, 5, 6 times. I can't even remember how many times. And eventually I got lucky. But yeah, you really have to stick to it and go to it. Throughout my underwater playing and testing, and I was fortunate enough to connect with a Japanese Olympic medalist, synchronized swimmer who was based in Malta. She had actually come to Malta to learn how to speak English, I think. And she remained in Malta and started synchro swimming and all that. But throughout her time, we connected, and she was kind of my model for underwater, and we collaborated on a number of projects, and this was one of them with the tuna pens, where she was so incredible in terms of her work discipline and underwater sort of commitment and determination to help get photography and shots and everything that even I was totally, amazed by her commitment. And this was here, we are at 20 meters, so she'd come next to me, take air from my I had a buddy as well that had air, come swim across and take a few pictures and come back. And to be honest, after this, shooting this assignment, I thought I didn't even manage to get one picture. I mean, and that was, kind of under the story of taking photography and pictures underwater, where you never really know what you might have captured or if something came about. And luckily, she was so good at what she did and the poses and how she did it, only because she had spent, years and years of shooting and training underwater as a synchronized swimmer, that, she was able to pull off great moves and flawlessly go up and down while I was in my scuba gear, my comfort. And this was a case where she was going up and down with a dress, and I would just stay on the bottom, and she'd come up and down, and I'd try to give her instructions of what we did. But it was so fulfilling to work with an athlete and a model that would help, sort of enhance your photography or create, content that was uniquely different. We had a stylist as well that would, help us with the dresses, which is nice when you collaborate with different people and different artists. And here, there's actually Saho on the left, and the other girl is another Japanese synchronized swimmer who was actually, I think, the head of Cirque du Soleil. And I had the opportunity to work with both of them underwater and capture these kind of images where, again, you're working with different locations, and this is just off Golden Bay, using Malta and its beautiful coastal waters as a bit of a stage. This was a little project which I did up in the Alps, where I had the opportunity to work with this Arctic explorer who actually dived in various parts of the North Pole and was a specialist in actually diving with polar bears. And I was sort of commissioned to do a small little documentary on him of diving underneath the ice in the French Alps. And it's a small little video which I'll play. And so you can.
Mon histoire, je suis tombé amoureux du monde de la plongée à l'âge de 11 ans. En fait, je voyais sur des magazines des images de plongée, à l'époque c'était beaucoup costaud d'ailleurs, et j'arrachais les pages des magazines et je les gardais. À l'âge de 16 ans, 17 ans, j'ai un copain qui avait un lac chez lui et qui avait un jour m'a appelé au mois de décembre, je crois que c'était un 31 décembre d'ailleurs, et il me dit Alban, viens viens plonger, le lac il est gelé, viens, on va voir ce qu'il y a dessous. Et donc on s'est mis à l'eau et je me suis immergé sous l'eau et j'ai trouvé ça juste fabuleux parce que c'est les couleurs, les reliefs, c'était subjugant. Donc c'est là où ça m'a vraiment plu. Le grand public, il revient avec des étoiles dans les yeux et c'est aussi important de faire partager un rêve, de parler du dépassement de soi, du courage, et puis aussi cette idée de faire passer un message environnemental aux gens. C'est une manière ludique, le monde de l'aventure est une manière ludique pour faire passer ce message environnemental en disant regardez comme c'est beau, on leur explique ce qui se passe, en disant comme c'est beau, on a envie de le préserver. Moi c'est ça qui m'intéresse, c'est montrer ce qui est beau parce que ça donne envie de le protéger. Je m'appelle Alain Bichon, je suis membre du LAN depuis plus de 15 ans.
Yeah, so that was quite a fun little project, which didn't end up as fun as I would have liked it to, because my dry suit had leaks, and so it was a bit chilly. But yeah, but then it led on to other expeditions, which I did on the picture on the left, which is in Iceland, and that's in between that, diving between two continents, which is known for, which is also again in 2-3 degrees of water, which is quite incredible because the visibility was over 100 meters, and I mean the interesting things about these are, you know, sort of what goes in, you know, getting into these shots are, you know, you have to do a dry suit diving course, you have to be prepared, your camera gear needs to be of a certain caliber to be able to live up to these expectations, and then hope for the best. Shooting underwater photography has its challenges and its beauty, and again, there are the beautiful crystal clear water shots and nature shots that one goes for, which I'm drawn to, and I must say, you know, this is, you know, a type of a shot which takes you somewhere. It's sort of like, it's an image which, I don't know, gives a certain amount of tranquility and a certain an emotional feeling, or whether you're, you know, underwater or space or that shimmering light or on the sand. But besides these pictures, I was always prepared to try to challenge myself. And one challenge which I kind of eventually got into was one day when I was driving by Malta, and I noticed, you know, how they, you know, sort of take the horses swimming down there. And I connected with a Swedish horse trainer, and I learned about the process of the horses, why they do it, and what they do, you know, why they take horses, you know, swimming, and the benefits of it. So I asked if I could document it, and I'm not a massive horse fan myself, to be honest, but after publishing, you know, a series of these pictures, only did I realize the amount of horse fanatics there are globally, and it's quite amazing, because I've made quite a number of prints for people from all over the world who are fascinated by, you know, this series of pictures which I did with the horses swimming. I did a few different locations in Malta where this was at Little Armir, and a few were at near Malta, up in that area, that bay which they take them swimming. And then other locations which I had to sort of get some permits for, like Golden Bay, and but more important, it was more, you know, trying to convey, you know, sort of a different perspective, a different way of looking at an image and a horse. And that's what was so intriguing with a lot of people who saw these pictures, and they thought, you know, it was quite unique in its own way, and it had its element of risk, because I was swimming literally below the horse, and the horse gets frightened by the bubbles of the aqualung, and it sort of speeds up, and I could hear the horse and the hooves. So I really had to keep an eye on my depth gauge and make sure that I wasn't going to suddenly get whacked in the horse by the horse hooves. And this was in Golden Bay, which again, which was a series of shots which I did there, and trying to convey, you know, that a different angle, working with the light, working with a bit of the reflections and shadows and everything that hopefully comes together as you're shooting. But it's what I find challenging, and it's what I find rewarding, and it's what keeps pushing me in this my realm of photography, which I'm really drawn to and love sharing, to be honest. You know, today I really enjoy sharing and helping younger people who are into photography, and try to pass on, you know, the bit of experience that I have. And, you know, I think growing up, you know, we all have a sort of a wish list of, you know, where we'd like to be, or what we'd like to do, or what we'd like to capture. And one of my wish list was swimming with, or really capturing, you know, sort of big whales. And I was fortunate enough, when I was in Australia, I was on an assignment doing another project, and you meet people who are involved in different projects, and I had connected with a guy who created expeditions in Tonga, and I asked if I could join him, because, you know, it was a limited window of when I could do, and I fulfilled one of my wish lists, which was to actually swim with humpback whales, which, to say the least, was, you know, exhilarating, where you're next to a huge, you know, 20, 30, 40-ton humpback whale, and sometimes, you know, you either have the males or the female and the calf. And it's an interesting interaction that goes on, because the mother allows the calf to come and interact with humans, and the mother would stay at a little, you know, sort of depth, just keeping her eye on her calf, and the calf would come and interact with humans. And Tonga is one of the few places where they allow legally 4 people to swim with whales, as they're doing migrating, coming up to the warmer waters, before heading back down to Antarctica. So you're up close with this huge, beautiful mammal, and occasionally you get this sort of level of connection where you're seeing, you're eye to eye with a whale, and it really is overwhelming. Then you get different shots or different opportunities where you're free diving and you're going down, and there's a lot of movement, but at the same time, there's a lot of respect. You've really got to respect what's going on. You learn the process, which in the case is very important, to maintain eye contact with the mother, because the minute, you know, she doesn't know where people might be, or if there's a slight threat to the calf, then she might get agitated. So you really have to work within those boundaries. And yeah, every now and then you're fortunate enough to get maybe a different type of movement from the whale, where you're firing off as many as you can, you know, pictures and hoping for the best. This was a case of the whales were swimming off, but I must say I did have a small encounter one. I don't think I have the picture here, but where the calf was swimming away and suddenly decided to go one way, and the mother saw the calf swimming away, and suddenly I had a 20-ton, 30-ton humpback whale swimming right in front of me, and I tell you, I swam as fast as I could to get out of the way. This was close to that element where the mother wasn't too happy, and they quickly tell you to move away, or if they're not happy with you being around, you get a tail swipe. And there have been occasions, and we've seen a few occasions, where people get hit and they break a bone in no time at all. So you've really got to respect, but the rewards and the feeling of hearing the sound and being in the sea with them is just incredible. And here you have a mother and a calf, and the connection between the two is really, really beautiful, because there's always that intimate moment where the mother is looking after the calf, and the calf is always rubbing itself sort of against the mother, and in terms of protection, and I guess there's so much nurturing going on, and lessons for life that the mother passes on. And then you try to capture something a bit artistic, and you try to work with the elements, with light, maybe a bit of black and white that you eventually convert a raw file to. And that's where I like to play around as well within my photography, and try to sort of make the most out of whatever I can. I would say, because I'm old school, because I started off shooting transparency slides, I tend to try to still shoot that way, where I try to get the shot right from the beginning, rather than think about it as a digital process later on. And I'm very much inclined to try to shoot a picture and get it as good as possible from the beginning. Collaborating throughout my journey, I've really felt that it's really important and vital that I sort of collaborate with people, because ultimately you can never really do anything on your own. You're always need somebody, or need support, or even if it's somebody helping you with something small. But at the same time, I really feel I like to collaborate with whether it's athletes, or when I started photography, or artists, or even just giving back, where you're helping younger people, or people who are willing to learn or asking, and I find it's a really important aspect of my photography. When Neil Ajus, sort of decided that he was going to do his first major big channel swim, he'd asked me if I could help document his swim, and he's a friend of mine through the swimming community, and of course, I jumped to the occasion, and it was a privilege for me to be, sort of documenting his first Sicily Malta swim, and I tried to convey it in the best way I could. I'll show you a little video that combines the photography with Neil's voice, and and the message that he had, because it was partly a wave of change and a message that he was giving out.
It's not about the cold, early start. It's not about the sunburns. It's not about the hunger, or the thirst, or the stings, aches, or pains. There's no trophy. It isn't about the crowds. It's not about the distance. It's not about swimming. It's not what you think or I think.
might have something to do with doing, about giving a damn. It can be about the seas if you like. Just look around. The repetitive movement over and over and over again. It's impossible to move forward without action.
So that was Neil after he had finished, his first swim, and then I think I've got a picture over here which was his final swim last year, at the end of his record-breaking swim, where he realized he had just accomplished what he set out to do. And I just love the moment of what's going on here with him just realizing that, or settling into the reality. And, you know, this collaboration of working with people is, I find, really rewarding and I find fulfilling, because somebody has a message and you're helping pass on that message, and you're working together, you work as a team, you bring your experience to the table. I try to bring my knowledge of what I can offer, and then you work with different people who all have their views, and you agree on, and you work towards a goal, and I've always sort of thrived, I suppose, on that kind of relationship. Another part of it is working with free divers, and we've got it's become quite a community, or very sort of I would say popular in Malta, where, you know, there's free diving, especially Goto, where there's a lot of free diving going on. A lot of foreigners come to Malta, and I kind of managed to collaborate with different free divers. I tend to free dive myself, but I also use aqualungs as well, sometimes shooting. But the challenging part is trying to communicate messages, you know, trying to, you know, get people, give them a brief. You've got a very limited amount of time. Their aspect of going up and down, they've got to prepare themselves for it. And there are all these little things, these elements that come into play, which you have to respect and understand and work around. And then you see a picture. But I think the more you work with somebody and work with people who you're familiar with, and they know what you want and you know what they can give you, then you're able to, you know, create something that maybe is a little bit special and unique in its own way. And here we have, you know, 3 free divers just running across the sand, which we carried on shooting that day. And I remember we were on a boat and I gave them a bit of a brief and I told them what I wanted. And after the whole session, they said, we're really sorry, we didn't manage to get any pictures, or I'm sure you didn't get any. But in the end, you know, we managed to capture something that was fun and playful, and at the end of the day, you know, they end up with great pictures of themselves, where again, that's unique because, you know, it's a different environment, and maybe stepping away from the normal, you know, so you want to step away from what one is doing, and then incorporating the geography that Malta has to offer. My playground, which I would say, you know, is my homegrown turf, where I enjoy very much. I would say you know, constantly, I'm always looking for a bit of a challenge here. I still go out regularly in Malta, and I consider it, you know, my playground where I'm testing equipment, testing myself, looking for something different, working with again the elements which I'm all familiar and comfortable and respectful of. Shooting these images were really challenging because I was on a shore break and very close to the shoreline on a boat, so there were its complications and challenges. But you work towards it and you try to achieve something that is maybe a little bit unique. Working with what Malta and Gozo has to offer, which is, you know, a lot of beautiful geography and landscape, and incorporating, you know, the shoots that I do for yachts and boats, and sometimes maybe more on the pleasure sort of purposes. So it's, in terms of maybe a super yacht needs to be shown in a different location, which we did over here. We you know, had a super yacht that wanted something a little bit different, and I managed to convince a 77 meter super yacht to go inside Dweira, and we had to fly a helicopter down from Italy, and we did this assignment, and then, you know, it all sort of comes together with a bit of planning and logistics, and a bit of swearing as well. So yeah, I'm constantly looking for something that says something a little bit uniquely in its own way. As you clearly can see, that the sea is my playground as well, which I'm always trying to captivate and capture in its own way, and it's forever changing. You never know what you're going to get, and that's what I find the most exciting. And trying to find different unique locations, different perspectives, different vantage points. You know, sort of sometimes I'm using a drone, not very often, but occasionally it's tend to come in handy for certain shots when we don't have a budget to get a helicopter, but or maybe shooting with a long, huge 400 or 800 millimeter lens, trying to capture something that is, you know, alive and vibrant. Or is just trying to capture a wave that maybe is, you know, standing out in a different location and merging the two together. And this was a case similar to the previous shot, where I was at the mouth of the Grand Harbour or Valletta Harbour, where I was sort of literally on the reef, and luckily I had a good boat driver that, as I was shooting, I managed to capture a few shots with this beautiful breaking wave and sea spray going. Or, you know, just braving the elements and pushing the boundaries and waiting for that perfect storm. And that's pretty much what I'm motivated to do and enjoy sharing and enjoy doing.
Excuse me.
Yep.
I have a question. We've seen three vision points in your images: underwater, on the water, and aerial photos at the beginning. Which do you enjoy doing most? The underwater ones,
To be honest, it's almost they all offer something a little bit different, and they're all different challenges. I think the underwater requires a lot more planning logistically, but equally, you know, sort of the helicopter stuff can be equally challenging, but the most rewarding are when you're physically putting yourself in that position where you yourself are either on the water or on a boat. And a helicopter is great, but you're getting somebody to fly you around to a certain extent. You're positioning yourself there. It's true you have to look for the picture and work hard to get a picture. But I think when you put yourself in a position, I've always found those, they're a lot harder to capture, but in a way they're a lot more rewarding.
Are you still able to buy helicopters in Malta?
There is an operation now, but I've never hired. So
We still hire
the FM, yes, of course, we used to hire the FM. Yeah. I must admit, like for a lot of the shots in Europe, I work with a particular helicopter pilot who is, you know, very good on the marine aspect and knows sailing. So when you have that communication and level of understanding, it makes your life a lot easier. So the minute I say I'm working with this lens, or I want that or that, and he puts you into position and helps you. There are a lot of challenges, especially in the wind and the type of helicopter that you're flying with. So there are, it's challenges, but having somebody that is familiar with the helicopter, with the sailing environment goes a long way. And also you don't want to disrupt the boats, because obviously the downdraft and everything. And I think that's pretty much my little thank you to you guys for your patience. I hope I didn't bore you too much. I tried to bring a little bit of taste of what I've been doing over the past 20, 30 years, just a highlight. And yeah, it's been a fun journey.
Amazing images.
Thank you very much. Thanks.
Feel honored to have seen them.
Thank you.
Most of them, we don't really see them.
Yeah, no, I mean...
You're not very active on
No.
Instagram.
Instagram, I use it as a platform. Yeah. Yeah.
Question.
Yeah.
The instant when you were shooting the whales, obviously you can't plan as you said, but for example, when you see that you're in an area there are whales, you say, okay, I go on the water and see what you can find, or you'll be guided by the guy who know how the whale is going to react, because you can't stay away.
Yeah, no, you're right, because...
How do you go about?
So, I mean, well, first of all, you could go out for a whole day or 2 days and not see anything. So that's always Mother Nature. So that is the case. So, like one time we went out all morning till afternoon and we didn't see a whale. But there is somebody from Tonga who is an official that comes with you on the boat, on your boat, who is sort of like a guide or that sort of thing. And that person, would tell you if it's okay to go in the water or not. And they're able to read the body language of the whale. So there were times where the mother would slap its tail, and she would basically not be happy if anybody was close to her. And obviously you don't want to get hit by the whale's tail, because you'll end up either dying or getting badly hurt. So you have to respect what is going on. And what's going on at that time of the year, which is in August to September, you've got two things, where you've got at that time in the Pacific, which is next to Tahiti, Tonga, those Pacific islands, where you've got the mating season, where the males are trying to mate, or the female is looking after the calf. And that's what's going on. They don't feed at that time because they feed in Antarctica, so they migrate all the way to that area and then go back down to Antarctica. So that's the end of their migration period. What we do is we get into the water knowing that it's kind of relatively safe. But the shot which I showed you of the eye, it was actually quite a bit dangerous, because the calf was moving its pectoral fin, which is from here to and he or she is playing with you, because she's interacting with you, sort of trying to play. But if it hits your bone, in fact, it did break. I think the summer before I was there, somebody got a tail swipe and broke her femur, with just a little bit of a. But there is an element of risk, obviously. But you kind of need to, be cautious. You're wearing longer fins as well to move out of the way, and. To be fair, when the mother decides to go, all they do is a couple of, tail swipes, and they're off in the distance. You don't really keep up with them. So they choose for you to be in their space rather than you choose to be in their space.
So exactly, you're guided as to when to go. And
yes, yeah, there's a bit of guidance. I mean, with the orcas, it was a bit different as well, because with the orcas, they're feeding, so they're feeding on herring. In fact, the visibility is really murky because there's a lot of debris of the fish, sort of like that. It's murky, and they kind of swim next to you. But I mean, it was scarier, to be honest, swimming with the orcas than it was with a.
What sort of lenses would you be using, like the whale?
So I was using roughly a 16 to 24. That's what I was. That's.
So you were relatively close.
Very close. Yeah. No. I mean, yeah. I mean. Yeah, wide angle. No, I mean 16 is very wide for.
So that eye, when the eye was viewed.
So that I was on a 24, and I have photos of the pectoral fin right on me, and touching the camera. I mean, it's sort of, yeah. I mean, it's.
Had you got somebody else taking pictures of you shooting?
I don't know. I took on a few other people, but yeah. I know. And you're only allowed to free dive, so you're not even allowed to scuba dive. No.
Because of the bubbles.
Yeah, for the bubbles, you have to get again special permission. If you want to dive, they will give you, if you give a good reason for filming or stuff like that. There are people who go for longer expeditions. I mean, I was there for about 6 days, so I wasn't very long in Tonga. And it's quite a hike to get there.
Did your filming that you are aware of?
Yes, yeah. So that the filming was there, which I did for Dan, which are diving people, and we did a few other ones as well with some.
Don't you ever get seasick? Seeing those waves, I got seasick.
Well, yeah. Fortunately, I don't suffer because yeah.
Even I get seasick on helicopters.
There are people who really. I mean, one time, the time when the one I showed you with the lighthouse. There was a guy on the boat, and we had to after that sunrise shoot, I had to drop him off on an island because he turned blue. He was so seasick that and the sea state is, and then it's hard because you're shooting, you've got a camera, and.
My worst air sickness was in a helicopter. It was very windy, as you were saying. We weren't going up, and then we risked it, and when it's windy, the helicopter buffets you.
Yeah, no, it did. Especially over land.
Oh, I got so bad cramps that I couldn't hold the camera in my hand. It felt like a brick of after the support ceiling. I couldn't hold the camera, actually. I got so sick.
Funny enough, over the sea, a helicopter is better because the wind is a lot cleaner. So over land, you've got a lot of turbulence. So
as you know, there are certain places that you try to turn the helicopter that, as you know.
No, of course, exactly. Yeah. You have the tail rotor.
Once I shot from the big Russian helicopter,
I remember shooting for the Freeport, and
we removed
the door,
the stairs, and
I
was
was
1 feet out, and our co-pilot holding me from the start of the neck.
Yeah.
No, it wasn't made for that thing. He didn't know you were.
Yeah.
You would have pushed me. I'm sure.
It's like that's a sickness. What I can see. Some of the meteorological conditions can get quite daunting and dangerous, actually. Did you ever feel that there were moments or occasions where your life actually wasn't very?
I mean, yeah. Well, I mean, this is why I ask myself why I do it, But there have been times, yeah. There was one time in Tasmania, in Australia, where the sea state was really bad, and we were between two islands, and the boat we were caught, and we had only literally seconds to be able to ride down a wave and turn back. So that was one time. Another time was when, alarms go off on a helicopter, and we had to do a bit of an emergency landing. One time as well in the middle sea race, we had to land next to Cefalù because the filter, the petrol filter was blocked, and we had issues there. And then another time something else. I mean, there have been moments where you think, what the hell am I doing? Is it really worth up being here but that's why you choose your team, to be honest. You choose the people, and you try and take all the right precautions as much as possible. And even now, if we're shooting, for example, with a helicopter for more than 6 hours, that the pilot cannot fly for more than that amount of time. So you make sure that at the end of the day, you're just shooting a yacht race. So it's pointless, putting yourself at that unnecessary risk for a shot. So you plan your hours. I mean, in the Mediterranean, it's not as strict, but in the UK, they actually fly another pilot to take over. We need to carry on shooting. So they do that extra precaution. And when we fly over from Ireland to England, we wear survival suits as well, which they make us wear. Not that I think it would make any difference, but as a precaution, they make you do a survival course. And now for Australia, they're actually going to make us do a safety course where you get into the pools and they turn you upside down and all that sort of thing. You know.
Sailing shots and bad weather, sea spray and all that, how do you deal with it? Besides being the lenses?
But, well, yeah, it's obviously been a challenge, but I do get these covers from Aquatech. I'm not sure if you're familiar with the brand, where they are very useful and they allow you to carry on shooting when you're getting waves over. Obviously, you have the front part, which is, and you've got your lens hood, so you are being exposed, but at least those covers will allow you, I mean, to carry on shooting. You tend to keep your hand in the camera, so you're not taking it out and getting it wet, and they're like rain covers almost. And then I've got underwater sports housings, which also are a bit of a plastic, but not so cumbersome like for an underwater housing. But yeah, unfortunately, the sea spray. I mean, my early days, I did lose quite a lot of cameras before, you know, realizing that there were more things around and to help you. And I still see a lot of people. I mean, very often you'd get people join you on a boat or something, and I tell them, listen, guys, you know, don't even bother because you're going to throw your camera equipment in, you know, in an hour's time. So I try to, you know, pass on or tell people or tell them where to stay on the boat, where to be, where to position yourself, because, you know, in no time at all, and the wave will hit you spontaneously when you're not prepared for it. Yeah.
Hey, Kevin, sorry. A bit of a cheeky question. Are you on like a first name basis with like your insurance company? Like, do they really like you?
I stopped actually. I stopped insuring my gear because that was useless. But I don't know about the rest of the insurance, but yeah. No, but to be fair, because of the companies that I work with, they look after all the insurances. So yeah, there's a due diligence because the company that hires the main sort of like hardware equipment, they're American, so they do all their due diligence and they you know, obviously make sure that everything is insured, and so it's not something I really need to stay looking after and hassling. And what I do have to look after is if I use a drone, that I've got to have a 3 million third-party liability. Cool. Thank you very much, and you know, if I can be of any help with anything, please reach out. Very happy to pass on my little knowledge, and thank you very much for having me. Thank you.